I feel so Christmassy right now. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. So today I thought I would reflect back on 2023 and just think back on all of my highs of the year of reading and also all of the lows of this year of reading. So I did have 2 books that I DNF'd, so I did not finish this year, and I had about 12 5-star reads. I've read over 100 books so far, and these were my top 12. Like, they were 5 stars. I want to reread them in the future. Like, they were so incredibly good, and I just want to go through them with you guys and reflect on how this year went reading wise. I think I'm going to start with my DNFs first. I only had 2, but I do want to talk about those briefly. So the first book that I DNF'd was The Missing Years by Lexi Elliott. Now, I read this one pretty early. I read this in January, I believe, and it just did not connect for me. It's a mystery thriller about a girl who goes back to her family home, or she finds out her dad owned a house and he's missing, and so she gets to inherit his house and some weird things start happening. She's uncovering things. I don't know. I didn't finish it, obviously. I got about 100 pages into this book. It just was so boring to me. And to me, I don't like to judge a book until about like 70 or 80 pages. I like to give it at least that much. If I'm still not enjoying it, that's when I start to reevaluate whether or not I even want to finish the book. And this one, it just was so boring to me. It did have kind of that more like eerie atmosphere at times, but it just felt like there was nothing going on. It wasn't getting anywhere, and I was just very bored. And the second book that I DNF'd this year was Girl, Serpent, and Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. I did read this, I think in October. I already kind of talked about it in one of my wrap-up videos, but I read about 150 pages of this book, and I was enjoying it at first, and I thought I was going to really like this book. It is a fantasy about a girl, kind of like Shatter Me, where she is a princess. She is deadly to touch, so no one can touch her. So she's very isolated, and her brother, who's the prince, he is getting married, so he can become the king. And so just a lot of people are in the castle, and so she's exposed to a lot of things, and that's just kind of what was happening. There were a lot of like fantasy words that I didn't understand, so I looked in the back thinking, oh, there might be like a little definition of these words. There was. Do not look at them if you have not finished this book, because it spoils you. Immediately, I was spoiled so fast, and I was only like 20 pages in because I was just curious. I didn't know what I was reading. I was very confused. And 20 pages in, I got spoiled to a huge plot twist that happens about halfway through the book. I was so disappointed whenever I read that. When I read it, it just like totally changed my mindset when I was reading it. I knew what to expect, what was going to happen, and it just kind of ruined the reading experience for me. And also, have about 150 pages in, the book started going in a direction that I didn't necessarily like or vibe with, and I just couldn't finish it. So those were my 2 DNFs. Now let's talk about the fun books. These were all of my 5-star reads of 2023. I had 12 of them, and I did have a mix of genres. I had some fantasy, I had some YA, I had some romance, I had some mystery thriller, so just like a little bit of everything, and I'm really excited to talk about them. So the first book that I 5-starred this year was For the Throne by Hannah Witten. Now this is a duology. The first book is called For the Wolf, and it is about these 2 twin sisters, this kingdom that they live in. The prophecy is when the 2 twins are born, one will become the eventual queen of the kingdom, and the second one is for the wolf. And so for the wolf, she is given as a sacrifice to this wolf who lives in these wooded areas, like near their kingdom, and it's supposed to save their kingdom. I don't know. This is the second book in that duology, and the first book was very good. I did enjoy it. I ended up rereading it before I read this book, and because I had forgotten a lot of things. I'm glad I did, because going into this book was very confusing, but I had that first book fresh in my mind, so that really helped me. But this one focuses more on one sister, whereas the first book focuses more on the other sister. And I just really liked this point of view. I really liked getting this sister's point of view, and just the trials, the character development was amazing. Getting to see everything that she had to work through in this book was just so, so good. And also the romance in here. The romance was so good. I really enjoyed it. It was very slow burn, and it was just everything I could have wanted. And I also just loved the type of world that it was in. It was very different than what I was used to. Next up, we have a romance, and that is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a part of a trilogy, the Knock 'Em Out series, and I really enjoyed this trilogy overall. I think it's a 5-star trilogy or 5-star series for me. However, this one was definitely my all-time favorite. It's The very first one is about this girl who heads to her town where her twin sister lives, and she finds out that she has a niece that she didn't know existed. And it is very much found family, and she's just trying to start over in this town and just make something of herself. I just loved the family that she gained in this book. This trilogy was so incredibly good, and you see a lot of the side characters in this are in the later 2 books, and I just loved them so much. The banter, the chemistry between the 2 main characters was amazing, and I just felt like it had everything you could want in a romance. And I was kind of on a Lucy Score kick for a while, and because the next book that I gave 5 stars was By a Thread by Lucy Score. This one is about a girl who is, I think, a waitress. Was she a waitress? Yeah, she's a waitress. And one of her customers, this grumpy dude, he ends up getting her fired while he is actually, I think, having dinner with his mother. And the mother ends up tracking this girl down and offers her a job. And she is the CEO of this large business. And it turns out that her son also works for her. It just becomes forced proximity. And these two, it's very much hate at first sight, but slowly, obviously, evolves into love, and I just really loved it. It was an office romance, so cute. I loved the chemistry between the 2 characters in here, and the guy, the full circle, just the development of this guy throughout this book was amazing. He is honestly just like one of the top book boyfriends that you could possibly want. Next, we have a YA book, which was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This was my first time reading this book. I've heard so many great things about Lynn Painter. I've read a lot of her new adult romance books as well this year, but this was my first time reading her YA, and I love this book. I've seen The Duff, the movie, and it's one of my comfort movies. I really love the movie The Duff. I think it's so funny, and I feel like this book, it was literally The Duff. It was so good. I don't know timeline wise, like when this book came out compared to The Duff. I don't know which one was kind of taking after the other, but I really loved the relationship between the 2 characters in this book. Seeing them in high school at that young age where you're very impressionable, trying to figure out who you want to be and what friends you should have, and just first time relationships. Everything was so sweet in here, and I loved the guy in this book. I'm so excited for her second book that's coming out, I think, very soon, and I will definitely be reading that immediately. Next book. I mean, you knew this book was going to be in here somewhere, right? Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Loved this book. It was so incredibly good. I read this right whenever it came out, and whenever the hype, it was going crazy. I devoured this book. Like within 24 hours, I was finished with it. It was so incredibly good. This fantasy world, I never thought I would be the kind of person who's like, oh, I love dragons. But after this book, I have now bought a bunch of fantasy books because they had dragons in them. That was the only reason. I didn't even look at the plot. Just the fact that it had dragons in it made me want to read them. And this book is why. It's about this girl who ends up going to this war college where they become dragon riders. It's very deadly, very scary, lots of trials. I would say this is very much a mixture of Aragon and Divergent. And it was just so incredibly good. All the characters, all the side characters, everything. It's so fast paced. Like the action in this book was just constant. And what I thought was going to be the end of the book ended up being only like halfway through it. And so it was like, I got all this awesome action like throughout the entire thing, in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And it was everything I could want in a fantasy. Next, we have The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. So this is one of her new adult romances. This is actually an interconnected standalone. The first book, I think, was Mr. Wrong Number, which I've also read. I read that last year, and I read this one this year. Loved it so much. It is a shorter romance book, I will say, but the chemistry between these 2 main characters, the banter, was so good. I thought they were so funny. I don't know what it is about Lynn Painter's writing. I don't know what it is about her sense of humor, but I just get it. I get it. All of her jokes, everything that her characters say to each other, it's like an inner dialogue that I feel like I have when I'm thinking about just like, oh, what I could have said in the moment, but they actually say it in the moment, and it's so funny. I found myself laughing out loud so often during this book. She's bartending at a wedding that he is the best man at, and they end up hooking up, and she sneaks out of his hotel room later that night, and they both are trying to find love, and they both end up on these dating websites or this dating app. And so one time whenever they are on there, they end up seeing each other on there, and that's how they kind of reconnect, and they make this pact where they will go on first dates, on these like blind dates together with other people, and then if they don't work out, then they'll just go and get tacos afterwards. The friendship and just everything, how funny this book was, it was just everything. This is like one of those comfort reads that I feel like I will come back to if I'm ever in a book slump. I will just open this book and read it because it's so good. Next is a mystery thriller, and that is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I have a really hard time with mystery thrillers, like rating them a 5-star, because I feel like there's so many things that happen in them where I'm like, why would you do that? It's like watching any scary movie where you're just yelling at the main character saying, you are so dumb. Why are you going in the basement where it's scary? Like, it's like things like that just, it kind of irritates me and makes me not rate it a 5 stars because I'm just mad. I'm annoyed. But this one was just so good. The concept behind it was just every reader's fantasy, every reader's dream in a plot of a book. This had it. So the main character, she is house sitting at this house, which is very isolated out on this like beachy area. She reads a lot of books, and she ends up rating this book from an author like a 1 star and leaves a horrible review. And this author ends up stalking her and she's staying at this house all by herself in this very remote area with just her dog. The setting, everything about it was amazing. I read this on a flight to Maine, and I finished it. Like, after that flight, I finished it. And I was like, this was so good. I need more. And everything about it was just like constant, fast-paced, on the edge of my seat. There were scenes where I was like, I was so tempted to flip a few pages later to make sure that she was okay or that her dog was okay. And the amount of times that I seriously was so scared for her dog was insane. But it was such a great book. I really enjoyed it. And I think Taylor Adams, like, this is just one of those authors that I just vibe with. I think just the writing style was something that really drew me in and definitely made me want to read more. Next, we actually have another mystery thriller, which was surprising to me. I didn't think I would have another one this year. And that was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I'm very late to the game on this one. And I knew it was so hyped up whenever I read it. I read it in October, spooky season. From the first page, it just draws you right in. It kind of has one of those where it's in the future timeline and something bad is happening and you're like, what is happening? And then it flips to like months beforehand. And it draws you right in. So it is obviously about this housemaid, and she is being a housemaid for this family, this very wealthy couple with their, I think, daughter. From the moment that she starts working for this family, the wife is just kind of a nutcase. Like, she's insane. I found myself relating back to whenever I babysat in high school. Not that the family I babysat for was anywhere crazy like this. It reminded me of those feelings of when you're in someone else's house and just that feeling of, okay, this is not my space. I obviously can't do certain things. Like, I have to make sure that I am being respectful. This is a job. I need to keep this job. I need to keep them happy. And just everything that was happening in here, it just brought me back to that time when I was babysitting, and I just loved it. I loved how high suspense this was throughout the whole book. Had a huge plot twist that I kind of was theorizing on, but also didn't expect at the same time, and it just totally took me by surprise, and I'm so happy that I read this year. I also did buy the second one, have not read it yet, but I'm hoping I can read it hopefully soon, maybe in the beginning of 2024. Next, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts, so another fantasy. Lauren Roberts did it with this one. This book had every sort of fantasy trope that you could possibly want. Everything that I enjoy in a fantasy was in this book. So it's very much like Hunger Games. It's the society where everyone has powers, and if you don't have powers, then you are considered like bad, like you're gonna taint the society with the fact that you don't have powers. So these kind of people are like removed from society and basically sent to die. And in this one, the main character, she is powerless. However, she fakes her power, and that is the only reason why she has survived for as long as she has. So the main character ends up joining these purging trials, which is supposed to be all of the elites, all the people who have powers, come and fight and see who is like the top of this. She gets voted in to do this, so it's not something she necessarily wants to do. And the prince is also in these trials, and he is everything. I'm so excited for the second book to come out. Next, we have the Mind F series by St. Abby. This one is books 1 through 5. So it is a very large book, but it's 5 books all combined into one. This book, I don't even know. Like, after I finished this book, I missed the characters. I missed the story so much. I really want to reread this one in 2024 because I just loved the story. The characters were just amazing. I found myself crying in some spots, and I loved the romance. I loved the relationship in this book, and it took me by surprise. I honestly was kind of afraid of this just based on the cover and the title of this book, but I'm so glad I gave it a shot because I did rate it a high 5 stars because it was just so incredibly good. It was so emotional. I'm a big Criminal Minds person, and so reading this felt like a Criminal Minds episode or like a Criminal Minds season. And so it's this main character. She is a serial killer, and this guy she starts dating, he is the FBI agent who is trying to hunt her down. So that is what drew me to this book. I read it in my spooky season era, and it was so good. I'm so glad I read it, and I really miss these characters. I cannot wait to reread it. Next, we got Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This was whenever I was rereading the Hunger Games trilogy. I did read that trilogy back when I was like in middle school, but I reread it because Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes just came out, and I wanted to read that book, and when I was reading them, this was the one that stood out as a 5 stars for me. I've always loved Catching Fire. This is my favorite book, and it's also my favorite movie of all of the Hunger Games movies. And it's just so good. All of the action in here was amazing. You really get to see some of the characters kind of develop. I don't feel like I have to say much more. If you want more thoughts on this book, you can watch that video. And the last and most recent 5 stars I actually have is No Exit by Taylor Adams. Once again, Taylor Adams knows how to write a book. I don't know. This is about a girl who ends up getting stuck in a blizzard at this highway rest stop with these 4 other strangers. And when she's in this rest stop, she goes outside to try to get cell service, and she ends up passing this van that has a child stuck in a dog cage. That right away, that's what drew me in. It is now a movie on Hulu, so trust me, I will be watching that very soon. But this was just edge of my seat from start to finish, high suspense the entire time. I don't know. Everything about this book. I just read this like a few days ago and rated a 5 star, and it took me by surprise. I knew it was Taylor Adams, so I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna really like this because I like Taylor Adams' writing style. Reading this book, it was just so quick. It was so easy to read for me. I felt like the suspense it constantly had me, and I think Taylor Adams does a great job with the end of the book where you expect it to go one way, but then it does something completely different, and I ate it up. I ate this book up. And those are all of the books that I rated 5 stars this year of 2023. I have to say, this was such a good reading year. I really enjoyed all the books that I read this year, and I am so excited for 2024 to come and just to be able to read new books. I'm really trying to put myself out there. I'm going to try to read outside of my comfort zone more, but also I just know that there's so many good books coming out from some of my favorite authors, and I cannot wait to read them. I think they're going to be amazing. I have such high hopes for 2024, and I'm also very happy with how 2023 turned out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully some of these books are newer to you, but I know a lot of them are more well known and a lot of people rave about them. So sorry if I sound repetitive, but they're just good books. I don't know, good writing is good writing. I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.